Thank you very much. My name is Raja Rao. I'm one of the developer evangelists for Salesforce. My main role as a developer evangelist for Salesforce is to promote JavaScript within Salesforce and also communicate what's going on with Salesforce to outside community, including JavaScript communities. So just a little bit about me. Prior to joining Salesforce, I was a developer advocate for Node.js. I'm a big fan of Node.js, and I've been doing in the JavaScript world pretty much for at least 10 years now. So I used to work for a company called Zimbra, which is an email application that is similar to Gmail that built one of the earliest single-page apps, if you will. So I've been in the JavaScript world, and I'm a big fan of everybody who does JavaScript. So which means I'm a big fan of you guys. So this is our Salesforce safe harbor statement, because Salesforce is a publicly traded company. The gist of it is that don't make any purchasing decisions based on whatever I say, or I might tell that okay, this is going to come in the next 3 months or something. Rather make any kind of stock purchasing decisions based on what is publicly available in the market. So before I kind of get into the framework itself, I kind of want to set this context about what Lightning Framework itself is and how big of an impact it's going to make for Salesforce as a company. So what you're seeing here is a bunch of technology stack layer. So at the bottom of it, you see Force.com, Heroku, and Wave. How many of you guys know Heroku here? OK, perfect, everyone. So Heroku is a Salesforce. I know, I just wanted to make sure. So Heroku is a Salesforce company. And Force.com is another platform as service company that is basically built from ground up within Salesforce itself. And Wave is a new platform that we have recently acquired. It is kind of a premium analytical company that does all these high-end analytics and big data stuff for our customers. And one of the common themes about all these platforms is that it is API first. So Salesforce is one of the pioneers with respect to APIs. Making sure there are always APIs. Starting from I would say 10, 15 years ago. We currently have and support 32 versions of APIs, right? So pretty much most people, I don't know how many other companies support 32 different versions of the APIs, right? So now if you kind of look here at these little boxes here, sales, service, marketing, and all these things. So when you think about Salesforce, you probably think, oh, it is just a sales company. But internally in Salesforce, we have very large billion-dollar business units. So one of them is sales, and one of them is service, one of them is marketing cloud. We kind of call it marketing cloud, service cloud, sales cloud, and so on. So the reason is a lot of our customers don't buy all the products that we make. They buy just one of them, sometimes two of them, sometimes all of them, and so on. So, but the very important part about Lightning, and the reason I'm talking about all these things, is that you see these purple layers that is kind of sandwiching all these cloud platforms that we sell. Because until recently, Salesforce, even today, for example, if you get a new Salesforce account, you see our old generation UI framework. And pretty much everything that is being built and supported for, I would say, maybe 10 years or so, right? 8 to 10 years old. So right now, as we speak, we're transitioning away from that old UI to a brand new user interface using Lightning Framework. So this particular framework is not just a skunkworks project, if you will. It's a very important part for Salesforce, and it is critical to make sure that it works well, because we are literally betting all these different business units on this. So what exactly is a Lightning Components framework? It is a component-based JavaScript framework. So you guys are all familiar with, I'm assuming, React and Polymer, Flight.js, Brick. So all these frameworks are all, some of them are all basically encourage people to build applications in the form of components. So implementation-wise, they may all be different. So for example, Polymer uses Shadow DOM and all those kind of web components technologies, whereas let's say React uses virtual DOM, DOM diffing, those kind of techniques. But philosophically, even React and Polymer, Flight.js, they all say that we should all be thinking and building components. So why are we building, we built our own components framework rather than building, using something else? There are multiple reasons. Can you guys still hear me in the back? Oh, something went wrong, I guess. How about now? I guess I'll just speak up, and then probably, hopefully, you guys will hear me. So there are multiple reasons why we built this one. So one of them is the mobile era, because everything went mobile, and our current technology, what we call as Visualforce, is actually very similar to JSP and PHP kind of programming language, and which means everything happens, all the rendering and all happens on the server, which simply does not work in the mobile side, right? So that is one of the reasons. And the other thing is we have pretty much all our customers. We have like hundreds of thousands of customers. So they all want to do, use mobile apps, and they already have invested in this old technology, right, if you will. So now, how do you bridge the gap between the old and also the modern AngularJS, React.js, and those kind of things? So we had to make sure that our existing customers, kind of embraces whatever we build, and also make sure that we build something that all the modern guys, most of you guys are all working on, and kind of build something that works for both of the worlds, for both worlds. So one of the next question people generally ask me is it open source or is it some proprietary language? So this particular thing is completely open source. So if you go to this URL, you can actually access it and then see all the details and all the implementation details, and also contribute to it. I can actually switch my browser and show you what it is. So it's on GitHub right here. So if you just go to force.com/Aura, and then you get the whole framework right here. Excuse me, and also all the documentation right here. So you can see this particular framework has been around for actually 2 or 3 years now. And you can see there are like hundreds and hundreds of components that we have built. So when I say component, think of it as any kind of HTML tag or any kind of complex widgets, if you will. So anything that you may need to use for your applications. So we have something that is that kind of works for that. So this particular framework is called Aura because this was the name of our open source project, whereas Lightning Components framework is basically the same Aura framework, but it has a bunch of Salesforce specific components. So there are something that we build that only makes sense for working and building apps within Salesforce. So this is so you may think like what is it that this is new technology, so these guys are transitioning to this. So what exactly are these guys doing here? Like, what is the roadmap here, or what is the end result? So the holy grail for us is to get to a point where we can literally list all the widgets, all the components that you can build, and then let our administrators and our product managers and others from our customer companies can literally go there and then pick and choose and create a mobile app or any kind of a desktop app by using a designer tool like this. So this is what we call as a Lightning Builder app. This is actually, I would say, like more or less out there. So we actually previewed it and at our Dreamforce event in October. So it's heavily actively in works, and we hope to essentially GA it by at least the next Dreamforce timeframe. So this is kind of very similar to if you're familiar with like a Polymer designer tools and stuff. So this is very similar to that. But the idea here is engineers build all these components, and whenever they build these components, they start showing up in this list over here. And product managers and business, product managers and marketing guys or anyone, whoever is not technical, can just go here and then drag and drop all these components and customize it and then build it, make it its own application, if you will. Right? So another interesting thing about here is if you look at the bottom right here, this is also something called as Appexchange Components. This is almost like an app store for Salesforce components, if you will. So anyone can build a third-party component. So if suppose you just decide you're not doing anything with Salesforce, and you just decide, oh, this is a really nice widget. Like, this is a nice, very nice, some animation library, right? So if you just componentize that, and you can put it can actually submit that to our app store called Appexchange App Store. And then our customers can actually end up buying and installing it and using it in their own products. So that's the overall goal for what we are doing. And the thing is, it's this particular thing is already in development, and it will be in GA soon enough. So again, the idea is like you build it in this, for example, in this Mac, and then you can start seeing the end result in the iPhone app, in the Salesforce iPhone apps. So this is so one thing I forgot to tell is that this particular app itself is built using Lightning components. So the second one is, so when you think about a company as a whole or holistically, right, it's not just about building a CRUD application. So it's also about implementing workflows, triggers, and so on for lots of these processes that a company faces, right? So typically what happens is you might, if you don't have some kind of a UI tool, then you end up going to the server and implement all these workflows and processes on the server. So which means you need to do it, every company needs to do the same thing on the server. So instead, you could potentially, instead of just do it using our or any GUI tool. So the idea of this particular tool is to allow all of our Salesforce customers to build any kind of workflows and any kind of processes using just a GUI tool. Again, this is another production app that we actually was in beta, Dreamforce, and it is going public soon enough. So this allows you to visually build all kinds of flowcharts, and then trigger send emails, and trigger job flows, and trigger continuous integration, and so on. And the third one is, if you have heard of Salesforce One mobile app, if you go to App Store or Google Play and download Salesforce app, that actually is a hybrid Salesforce One mobile app. It also uses Salesforce One Lightning Component Framework. So this was actually our very first production app that we built, and it's been public for around 2 years now. And again, the idea was like we'll start building this, and we could have totally gone completely native, but the reason we didn't do it is because we already have our existing customers, and also ourselves, we want to encourage HTML5, and also we want our customers to take whatever they build in the old technology to easily move it to Salesforce One. So at the end of the day, in the future years, basically, this is what we are going to see. We want to make everything look very modern, and we're building every entire company on this, and everything is going to be seamless and responsive and so on, and the same UI shows up everywhere. So again, the component landscape I was talking about earlier, you guys already are familiar with all of this. So basically, everyone, all the big companies, all the big companies, consumer companies are already proposing this is the way you should go, and we are actually going the same way from the enterprise side as well. So what exactly is a component? So as far as we are concerned, a component simply encapsulates HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, and they can interact between components via events, and they can be stacked, they can be inherited, almost like an object-oriented programming language. So with that, I'm going to give you a super quick high-level demo. Nothing fancy, but something that is useful. So what you're seeing here is, let me make sure that it's internet is there. Okay, perfect. So what you're seeing here is a really simple, basic application. So it actually has two components. So there is one component at the top that's called opportunity. This is like a sales guy's list of opportunities that that is going to actually make a sale. So this is just a bunch of companies where this guy thinks that he can actually sell the product to. And at the bottom is the opportunity details. So the interesting thing is that these two components don't know each other at all. They are just independent components, and they are all interacting between the two using events. So they're very loosely coupled, but they're all very self-contained components. So this is right now running as part of our Salesforce One mobile app. This entire thing, as I said, is built using Lightning Framework itself. So one of the big advantage here is that now any of our customers can go and then build whatever they want, and then they can add it as a new component inside our Salesforce on mobile app. So if you are an employee of company XYZ, when you log into Salesforce, and you will actually start seeing all your company-specific applications inside the same mobile app that you just downloaded from App Store, right? So that is one of the main advantage of this kind of an implementation. So the other thing is, let me go back here. So this is what you're seeing here is a web editor that built inside Salesforce. So the another thing that I want to show here is, if I do a preview here, you will now see the same application now acts like a standalone application. So it's no longer part of Salesforce One hybrid app. So you can build a component, and then that component could be used by some random standalone application that has a URL, and it could be some desktop application like the ones that I showed you earlier, and and just work just fine. And also, the same component could be used and then embedded inside our Salesforce One mobile app itself. So one of the big advantages that we have seen ourselves with this kind of an approach of going towards component is that prior to this, we had everything in Salesforce using Lightning, but people used to create these kind of custom application, but it's not really components, just some AngularJS app, if you will. And then if they want to run that in Salesforce on mobile app, now they had to put an iframe and then embedded that AngularJS app or React, whatever app, inside Salesforce on mobile app. So the problem with that was our main application and the embedded application no longer knows each other. So and it's very hard to communicate with all the backward and forward events, and it's very hard to communicate the context between what's going on in the main Salesforce app and this embedded Salesforce in this embedded custom applications, right? So with this kind of an approach, now all these apps are literally running on the same level. There is no iframe going on anymore. So if you actually go back here and then see the HTML for this, then you can see that there is no iframe in it, right? So which also means that there could be a lot of security issues. So this is another reason we are actually encouraging people to do component-related stuff, because it becomes very easy for us to verify all the security issues that a component might have, right? If you don't have this kind of a paradigm, then it becomes very hard for us to verify, and test all the security issues that a component might have and reject that particular component. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how it's going to look suppose you want to build this application yourself, and all you will actually do when you are a developer is to open this application, and you simply have a tag. This is called as a namespace. So you just have this namespace and application tag, and this is your particular sandbox's namespace. This is, in my case, it is Java. And then you just add the component name to it. So if some third-party guy were to build this, all I had to do is to just add these two lines in between inside the application tag, and that component will start to work, right? And let's kind of dig in a little bit as to see what each of these tags look like. So let me open up the first component. So this is the opportunity select component, the top component that you saw. And one of the things you should notice on the right-hand side is, when you say a component is first of all a markup, and secondly it has some JavaScript files. In our case, it is a JavaScript controller and helper files, and we also have CSS styling, documentation, and all sorts of things that could be part of a single component. So even if it is a simple input field, we provide a way for you to encapsulate that simple input field where you can document it, where you can say all sorts of stuff that are part of that component. And another thing that you see at the bottom too, it's not enabled on my org, is the design and SVG. So once you build this component and you go to this design tab and SVG tag, that's the place where you add an icon and also some kind of some custom attributes so that it shows up in the app builder that I talked about earlier. So imagine that you added this, and you could easily go back here in our app builder thing I showed up. So and then it's going to start showing up right over here in this section for your companies and also any other third-party customer to actually start using it. So now let's take a look at how the code itself, so you kind of get an idea of it. I definitely don't want to make anyone an expert in this in the next 2 minutes, but rather want to just give you a high level. So a component is pretty much always has a JavaScript controller, as long as it has some kind of a JavaScript action to it. This kind of should remind you, if you're familiar with AngularJS, this is very similar to the ng controller directive in AngularJS. And so this is almost identical. So if you're aware of AngularJS, you should be very comfortable with this, is what I gather. So you just create a controller. This is just a JavaScript function. And then we also have this new, what we call as an Aura tag, which is almost like another directive, if you will. So this thing, whenever you say attribute, this allows you to set all the incoming attributes. So you have a component, and someone needs to set some values or send some data to this, then they can set it through the attributes. And anything that is described as an attribute it also gets a two-way data binding, just like in AngularJS and Knockout.js and so on. And then the third one is the handler. So this is basically another tag that says what kind of listeners this component has. So if you have a component that needs to listen to a bunch of events from some other component, you just declare a handler on it. And I don't want to go into the details here, but you can see this. There is another tag. This is Aura iteration. This is very similar to AngularJS's ng repeat. So this literally helps you iterate over the data and then build the markup. So then the controller. So controller is basically contains a list of functions that has to deal with the DOM event. So if a user clicks on something, or if you want to update something to the DOM, then you put those functions in here. And then the helper function is, again, another set of functions. So these functions usually handle any kind of events to the server or to third-party websites and locations. And then we have a style sheet. So this is a place where you declare all your style sheets, and you have to have the .this in our case, because the .this will be replaced by the component's name when it actually runs in the production arc, making sure that your CSS doesn't mess up someone else's CSS. And also all these documentation and renderer. So all these guys are basically there to help you render, make some customizations to the rendering of the components. And one last thing I want to show here is the event itself. So the event itself is another declarative component, if you will. It's a specialized component. So all it does is you just say this is an Aura event and set some attributes. So these are the places where you say what kind of data this particular event carries between components. So it's very simple. So you just declaratively specify a component and a controller and some event, and you hook them up in an application, and then it starts showing up in our mobile app and also in our standalone application. That's pretty much it. And I just want to end by saying that we are hiring, especially for this particular project. So if you or any of your friends are looking for a great JavaScript opportunity, this is going to be it. We're literally hiring, especially JavaScript and CSS ninjas, if you will, specifically for this project, and also help make our transition actually happen. Thank you very much.